One of the objectives for watercolor painting is always to learn to control your paintbrush, control the amount of water that you put on your brush, and be able to always have a plan for what you are going to paint. That is why I have a picture up here, so I have something to look at to help guide me when I am painting. So if you're not painting the same designs as I am, that's totally okay with me. But I do recommend that you pull up some images maybe from the internet that inspire you. The internet is filled with a really large amount of ideas that can really help guide you into making a design that is really interesting. Yesterday we talked about our primary colors. From color theory, we understand that our primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. And those are the main colors from which we are going to create all of the other colors in the color wheel. So one thing I did not mention yesterday, and that is that when you have your own palette, I know you share palettes in my class, but when you have your own palette, and let's say you're working from one day to the next, notice how my colors are all dried up. My paint is all dried up in my palette here. It is really, really neat that you can just simply get out some water and mix it in there, and you can use those colors again. That is probably one of the coolest things that I know about watercolor painting, is that I can continue to use my colors day after day even if they dry up. So something for you to know. So what I'm just working on is just multiple different designs today. I am gonna remember to mix all of my colors in my palette, and then I can ensure that the colors in my paint pan do not get mixed up. All of my color mixing happens right in my palette. Blue's my favorite color, so I tend to start with blues the most. What I want to be able to do is kind of create a little bit of a border. Anticipate that my little paper is like the edges of your mini sketchbook that we created. What are we going to be doing to make each of those pages stand out? Well, I'd like to be able to do some different triangles and shapes that will kind of make it stand out. So the edges of your sketchbook are also something that you could decorate with designs. And basically, I want you to be able to fill in your pages with different ideas and colors that can just give it something interesting, because later on we're going to be adding words and other details like that. So if you are just adding borders to your pages, that's okay with me. So what I did here is I'm just kind of giving myself a little border along the edge of my paper, and then I'm just going to be using different colors to create different designs. So you can also see that I have lots of different designs on my example to the left here. And that's good to have in front of me, because when I get stuck or I'm just not, I don't know what to paint and I'm drawing a blank, I have ideas right there in front of me. So that's really helpful. Another term that I hadn't mentioned maybe before is when I am painting with watercolor paint, especially fine details like I'm doing right now, I'm making it look like little bitty hairs. I am just tickling my color pan, my little green right here. I'm not dipping my whole brush in. I'm just tickling the paint in that palette a little bit with the very tip of my brush. So if you can relate that kind of term to what I'm doing, that is also going to help you to control the amount of paint that you put on your paintbrush, which is definitely something you want to learn to do. Another thing I like to do when I'm painting is rest my hand on the table. If I rest my hand on the table, then I'm really going to be able to control my brush a lot easier. Whereas if I'm painting with my arms suspended in the air, I really am not going to have any control. Now, when you're painting, it's important that you find what's comfortable for you, but I also want you to know some different tips. For me, I rest my hand on my paper. That means that I always make sure that I don't have a design right here. I kind of start in the top left because I'm right-handed and I work my way down, and that also prevents my hand from smearing any of my details. We also talked a little bit yesterday, if you make a mistake, how to work with that. Watercolor painting is a very imperfect art. I feel like when you're learning to paint, you need to relax and enjoy the experience. And as a beginning painter, that also includes being flexible when the paint doesn't go exactly where you want it to go. So, or maybe I made a little hair that was just a little bit longer than the rest. What I want you to understand and achieve is the understanding that mistakes do happen and that it's okay and that you can work with it. So right now I'm not doing a whole lot of color mixing. I'm just using different colors straight from my palette. I have some green, I have some blues, and I'm just working on getting some really nice colors and giving myself a little design or a border along the edge. So this design is very abstract, and I like that I have this extra paper off to the left that gives me some ideas when I'm looking for, direction. That's why I always like you to have a picture and an image right in front of you anytime you are painting. Many artists like to start their paintings by having all of their designs or ideas written out with pencil first. That's totally okay. I really am a big fan of doing that, but I also wanted you to know that it's okay to freehand as well. So this right now would be called freehand. I didn't have a specific design already kind of drawn out, but this is a nice little start to giving myself a little border in that little mini sketchbook that you're working on. Later on down the road, we'll be adding different words such as quotes, words by themselves, and just different ideas of things that you could put into a sketchbook that would make it special and meaningful. There's really no right or wrong. And I guess that's an important part of what we're learning as well. It really isn't a right or wrong. If you end up getting too much water on your paper, that's just fine. You can work with it. Okay, so that's a really simple little design that I did, and it took just a few minutes. I And I think that's a really helpful thing to know, is that when you're creating your designs, if you're just filling in some space and giving yourself some borders, try to be flexible and have fun and just kind of do what comes to your mind. Thank you for watching.